Howdy folks, I hope you've all been enjoying your Christmas and New Year break. I certainly have, and in particular, very surprisingly, because I don't normally play ranked battles, I have very much been enjoying the current season of Ranked Sprint, which still has a couple of days left. It ends on the 3rd of January. And so I thought I'd put together a video showing how to best take advantage of it. And by that I mean how to play the Tirpitz, because this ship is by far, in my opinion, the most overpowered thing when it comes to tier 8 1 versus 1 duels, which is what this current season of Ranked Sprint is. It's 1-on-1. And for reasons that we're going to get into, the Tirpitz is incredibly good at that kind of format. But we can make it even better, and I'm going to show you how. So, first things first, commander skills. Now this may seem like a waste of a point, because in a 1-on-1, you're the only thing that can be targeted, so if you're spotted, obviously somebody's aiming at you. But priority target only works if somebody's aiming at you with their main battery guns. If they're armed with torpedoes and they suddenly stop targeting you, that tells you that they're aiming at you with the torpedoes. Next, preventative maintenance. The Tirpitz's turrets are kind of fragile. Even with this, they're going to get knocked out, but they're going to get knocked out a lot less often. Moving up to tier 2. For obvious reasons, adrenaline rush. Faster reload on all of your guns, including all of your secondaries. Moving up to tier 3. Normally this is where you'd pick Superintendent for an extra charge on all of your consumables, but these battles are over so quickly you're never going to get the full use out of all your consumables anyway, so instead we're going for basic firing training, 10% faster rate of fire on all of our secondaries. We're not going to take Concealment Expert, complete waste of time. The idea with the Tirpitz is to just get as close as possible, YOLO and torpedo your enemies, and hammer them down with your secondaries, so Concealment Expert is just a waste of 4 points. Instead, we're going to take advanced firing training for 20% extra range on all of our secondaries for those occasions when we don't want to actually YOLO somebody because they have better torpedoes than us, and instead we're just going to kite away and burn them down with our secondaries. And in order to more successfully burn them down with our secondaries, we're also going to take manual fire control for 60% better accuracy on all of our secondaries. And even though the game is trying to tell us not to do it, we are going to take inertia fuse for high explosive shells. And again, as you've guessed, this is to buff the Tirpitz's secondary batteries, because with this skill, the Tirpitz's poxy little 105mm pea-shooter secondaries can actually penetrate 33mm of armour plating, and as the more observant among you have realised, 32mm is what's required to defeat the armour threshold of the bow, stern, and most of the deck plating of Tier 8 battleships. So now, even the Tirpitz's smallest secondaries will absolutely dumpster all destroyers, cruisers, and battleships that it's going to face, and its 150mm secondaries are going to crap all over even the enhanced upper belt and deck armour of Russian monsters like the Vladivostok. Of course, the Tirpitz's other secret weapon, which usually comes as an incredible surprise to people who don't actually know this ship and attempt to YOLO you, is its torpedoes. 4 tubes per side. They don't have incredibly long range, 6 kilometers, but that actually works in your favour because the speed of 64 knots is pretty quick, and if you're getting torpedoes launched at you from that kind of close range, it doesn't leave you an awful lot of opportunity to avoid them. We're not quite done fitting the Tirpitz out for ranked sprint 1v1 tier 8 duels. There are some changes that we're going to need to make with our equipment setup. Obviously we're taking main armament mod 1 and damage control system mod 1, but instead of aiming systems we're going to take secondary battery modification 1 for increased range and accuracy on our secondaries. We're also going to take steering gear modification because we'd like to have some chance of at least being able to avoid any torpedoes fired at us. And this is one of those rare occasions where you're not going to want concealment systems mod, and you're actually going to use the target acquisition system mod instead. For exactly the same reasons that we haven't taken the concealment expert skill on our captain. In this ship, in this battle format, it's a complete waste of time. Now if you don't have a Tirpitz, and I realise of course that not everybody will, it is after all an expensive tier 8 premium, the Bismarck isn't a bad choice, but it's nowhere near as good because it doesn't have torpedoes. But the Admiral Hipper, which is not a premium, so anybody can get it, is a surprisingly good alternative choice. It has the same torpedoes as the Tirpitz, except it has more of them, with an extra launcher on each side. It's pretty quick, allowing you to get into that 6 kilometer torpedo range, and it's actually quite survivable with 27mm of upper and 40mm of lower bow plating. Now, the Tirpitz and Bismarck's 15-inch guns cannot overmatch 27mm of armour, so the Hipper is actually remarkably tanky. It even has 27mm of deck plating, making it remarkably resilient against anything armed with 15-inch guns. Of course, anything armed with a 16-inch gun is going to blast right through that 27mm, although some of those shots may still bounce from the front off the 40mm lower bow. And if the Hipper is tanky, then its premium sister ship at Tier 8, the Prinz Eugen, is equally tanky and equally good if you have it, especially if you expect to be fighting lots of Tirpitzes, and you probably should expect that. Also, don't forget both of these ships have access to the extremely good German hydroacoustic search consumable, which will detect a ship from 6 kilometers away and a torpedo from 5.4. If you have all of these ships available, the Eugen, the Hipper, the Bismarck and the Tirpitz is definitely going to be your weapon of choice. The others are good, but the Tirpitz is just better. The others all have plenty of good things to recommend them, but they're all missing out on something that the Tirpitz isn't. The Bismarck's tanky, it's got great secondaries, it's got big guns, but it doesn't have torpedoes. The Hipper and the Eugen have the torpedoes, but they don't have the big guns, and they're not nearly as tanky, and they definitely don't have the secondaries. The only thing that the Tirpitz lacks is hydroacoustic search, but that's why we've taken the priority target skill and the target acquisition module. And just to prove that I'm not all mouth and no trousers, I can actually walk the walk as well as talk the talk, I'm going to demonstrate my 89% win rate. Despite my being a horrible scrub-a-dub, definitely not what anybody would describe as one of the best World of Warships players out there. But with the Tirpitz, I have managed an 89% win rate in ranked sprint. I should probably qualify that claim. I do have an 89% win rate. I've only played 9 games. I haven't exactly been kicking the arse out of ranked sprint. I've been playing it. I've been enjoying it. But, you know, it's Christmas and New Year. I've got better things to do with my time. But out of those 9 games, I've won 8. In fact, the only game that I lost was against an extremely well-played Massachusetts. Massachusetts is also a fairly good pick for this event. And if you have either the Massachusetts or the Massachusetts B and you don't have a Tirpitz, you should definitely be using your Massachusetts. I still think the Massachusetts is an inferior pick overall to the Tirpitz, although not by much. In fact, I'll show you the game that I lost against a Massachusetts, and I simply got outplayed. In this, however, my first Tier 8 ranked sprint, I'm fighting a Key. Now, on paper, the Key may seem like a good choice. Technically, it has better firepower, 10 16-inch guns compared to my 8 15. But as you just saw, even a 16-inch gun can't overmatch my 32mm of bow plating, and definitely can't overmatch my 50mm of deck plating. So his having bigger guns and 2 more of them is only really an advantage if I'm going to be dumb enough to give him a broadside to shoot at medium to long range, and I'm not going to do that. The only time I'm going to give this guy anything even remotely approximating a broadside to shoot at is when I'm nice and good and close, and my turtleback armour covering my citadel is basically going to make it impossible for him to score a citadel hit. The Key's other big disadvantage against the Tirpitz is his terrible armour. He basically has 32mm everywhere, and even my 105mm secondaries can penetrate and do damage to that. And my secondaries are already chewing him up, and that's only going to get worse as I close the range. The only thing that's preventing me from just YOLOing right in and hitting him with torpedoes is the fact that he can do the same thing to me. The Key is one of the few battleships that comes on with torpedoes. His torpedoes have a 10km range, but he only has 3 on each side. So I'm just going to keep this island between him and any torpedoes that he might be firing in my direction. I'm already anticipating some torpedoes coming around the side of the island up ahead of me. So I'm already turning away, and this is where I'm at the most vulnerable, because this is where he's got the best chance to do some damage to me with all 10 of those 16-inch guns. Yeah, here it comes. This is where he's going to win or lose the fight. Oh, and he did do a lot of damage. I think if I'd been in anything other than a Tirpitz or a Bismarck there, I would have died. But, well, his armour is absolutely terrible, and even my 15-inch guns, less of them, can do the same to him. There's no way I'm getting torpedoed from here. He just doesn't have the firing angle with the island in the way. And once again, my secondaries are working him over. That's the last opportunity he is ever going to get in this battle to do that kind of damage to me, because I'm just not going to give him the firing angles. This is what you do in the Tirpitz. If you can YOLO in and torpedo, then you YOLO in and torpedo. And I can't really do that because, well, he has torpedoes as well. So if you can't YOLO in a torpedo, you just kite away and you burn them down with your secondaries. The key is now so low on health that he's going to have to come out and try to make his 10-16-inch guns work. But I'm not going to give him the angles that he needs to make that happen, and because he's trying to get all of his 10-16-inch guns to work, he's given me the angles that I need to hurt him with my 2 rear turrets while letting the secondaries continue to do their job. The Key's not a bad ship, it's just a bad choice for 1v1 tier 8 ranked. The Key certainly didn't play badly. I gave him the one opportunity to really hurt me with all of those 16-inch guns, and he definitely took it, but it wasn't enough, and that was the only chance I was ever going to give him. At the end of the day, he was just in the wrong ship for this battle format. So how about a Bismarck? Bismarck isn't a bad choice. It's basically a Tirpitz, just without torpedoes, and with hydro. And that's the problem. It doesn't have torpedoes. Now, if you don't have torpedoes and you're fighting somebody who does, you want to stay in open water. You definitely don't want to be nosing around the narrow channels between islands where you can be caught by surprise like this. This Bismarck has already lost this battle. Right now, his only chance of victory is to turn and kite away. And he can't do that, because if he turns to port, he exposes broadside, I pummel him with armour piercing, then he runs into an island and I torpedo him. If he turns to starboard, I pummel him with armour piercing when he exposes broadside, and then I torpedo him. No matter what he does, he has lost this fight. And he's lost this fight because I have torpedoes, he doesn't, and I caught him at close range, when not even his hydro is going to help him. He's turned to starboard, there's the broadside, there's the armour piercing, decent amount of damage, but, well, he's got the same turtleback armour arrangement that I do, so I'm not expecting huge amounts of damage with the main battery guns, but I am expecting huge amounts of damage with the torpedoes that I have, and he does not. You wouldn't have expected a fight between a Tirpitz and a Bismarck to be as one-sided as this. And if the Bismarck had had the opportunity to kite, it would have been an even fight, but he didn't. And he got torpedoed. Note that I'm not trying to follow him around in the turn to keep my front turrets pointing at him. That would give him a broadside to shoot at on me. And I don't need to do that, because my rear turrets, when he's on this kind of health, given that kind of broadside, are entirely capable of finishing the job. So Bismarck, a pretty good choice for 1 versus 1 ranked sprint, as long as you stay away from islands, unless you absolutely know that there are no torpedo-laden surprises waiting around the corner for you. What about if you're fighting another Tirpitz? Well, this is where things get interesting. The basic rule of thumb with the Tirpitz is to YOLO in and torpedo them. If they don't have torpedoes, and if you're fighting another Tirpitz, they're going to have torpedoes, so you can't do that. And if you can't do that, it's kite away and burn them down with secondaries. But another Tirpitz can do that to you, just as well as you can do that to them. But only if you both have exactly the same equipment and captain setup. Now, at this kind of range, the equipment setup isn't really going to matter that much. An extra 20% range on my secondaries is completely irrelevant at this kind of range. But the IFHE skill on the captain is going to make a difference, in a good way and a bad way. The 150mm secondaries aren't actually going to benefit from IFHE too much under these circumstances. And I've actually eaten one of his torpedoes and he's dodged all of mine, so first point to the enemy Tirpitz. My 150mm guns could penetrate his 32mm of plating anyway, and the extra penetration from IFHE doesn't help, because that gives me 49mm of penetration, and the Tirpitz's midships deck armour is 50. On the other hand, the IFHE does very much help my 105mm secondaries, which can now penetrate the 32mm of armour that he pretty much has everywhere other than on his midships deck. The downside, of course, the trade-off, and yep, he has launched more torpedoes, but I totally anticipated those coming. The downside is that I won't be setting as many fires, so if I have IFHE, and I do, and he doesn't, he'll be setting more fires than me, but he won't be doing as much damage with his secondaries. But while technicalities like that are all well and good, positioning is far more important, despite the fact that he has hit me with a torpedo, and I haven't hit him with any. And I'm pretty sure he's also been setting more fires than I have. He's on far lower health than I am because he's been exposing way too much broadside in order to launch those torpedoes and also to navigate around the island that he was driving into. And that's allowing me to really hurt him with my 15-inch armor piercing. I've still only fired the one torpedo salvo, and I'm pretty sure... There it is. Do you see how the priority target indicator switched off and then back on again? That's him aiming torpedoes at me. And because I'm in a Tirpitz, I know that the Tirpitz has a 90-second torpedo reload. Keep an eye on that priority target indicator every time he turns the ship. There, it's gone again. So I know he was aiming his torpedoes at me, and I'm turning to starboard, so I know these port side torpedoes are going to miss. And there it goes again. So now I know that his starboard side torpedoes are on the way, so I'm going to start turning to port. I've managed to get my second torpedo salvo of this game away. I'm pretty sure he's on his fourth. And he's doing a lot of damage, and yep, sure enough, there are the torpedoes. The question is, does he have the target acquisition module, and can he see my torpedoes? And, well, probably not. So, 1 versus 1 Tirpitz ranked sprint. Yeah, the minor technical differences between the way we've set up our two ships probably made some difference. I'm pretty sure my secondaries did more overall damage, but he set more fires. But what really decided the outcome of that battle wasn't any technical differences between the way our two ships were set up. It was positioning and paying attention and understanding how skills like priority target actually work. I think the most one-sided ranked battle that I ever played was against a Richelieu. I mean, right at the loading screen, I knew that I'd won. This is such a bad ship to choose. I mean, I appreciate if it's the only tier 8 you have, then you're going to use it. And you'll probably still rank out, because the good thing about this season of ranked sprint is that you can't actually lose a star, so you can only either maintain your position or advance, and if you just keep playing, eventually you'll rank out. So even in something as bad for this format as a Richelieu, eventually you'll rank out, but it's not going to be a pleasant experience. Let me explain the number of different ways that a ship like the French Tier 8 Richelieu is just terrible for 1 versus 1 Tier 8 ranked. For a start, its armour is garbage. It's 32mm everywhere, so all of my secondaries are going to be doing damage, as well as setting fires. Now, the Richelieu also has a lot of secondaries. Most French battleships do, and they tend to have very long range. But most of them are 100mm secondaries. So even with IFHE, they can't damage me anywhere but in the superstructure. Another reason why the Richelieu is incredibly bad is that, well, it doesn't have torpedoes, so its only option when faced with a charging Tirpitz is to turn away and kite. But then it can't shoot at you, because all of the guns are in the front. So if you want to fire, you have to give broadside. And, yeah, I mean, he's less than half health already. And I haven't even hit him with a torpedo yet. Switching to the armour piercing now. Actually, we'll get some torpedoes away since, you know, we're in range. Why the hell not? I mean, look at this. After 4 minutes, he's down to 17,000 health. And I'm still fine. Yeah, I mean, if the Richelieu is all that you have, then yeah, by all means play it. And you will eventually rank out, but it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So what does it take to actually beat a Tirpitz in this current ranked format, assuming that the player you're playing against isn't a complete potato? Well, I'll happily take the Pepsi challenge against a destroyer, because while I'm never going to catch a destroyer, and I'm never going to see a destroyer unless it wants to be seen, I'll know when he's aiming his torpedoes at me, and I can just sit in the cap circle and win on points. You can't do that against an aircraft carrier, of course. I imagine playing against a carrier is, well, about as much fun as playing against a carrier ever is. But I'll quite happily take the Pepsi challenge against any cruiser, destroyer, or battleship. The one time I did lose was against another battleship, and it was the USS Massachusetts. This is Fry on fire. He's in the Massachusetts, and so far he's the only person to beat me in 1 versus 1 Tier 8 ranked sprint. The Massachusetts is a solid pick. I still think I prefer the Tirpitz, purely because it has torpedoes. But there's nothing wrong with the Massachusetts, and I've had some other games against the Massachusetts that I've won, but it was pretty close. I had to rely on their making the kind of mistakes that Fry on Fire here never did. Remember, basic rule of thumb in the Tirpitz, if you're fighting anything that doesn't have torpedoes, then just charge right in and use your torpedoes. And if you can sneak up on somebody from around the side of an island where they have no warning whatsoever and can't possibly avoid your torpedoes, so much the better. And so Fry on Fire here, in the enemy Massachusetts over there, is sitting in open water, so he is not going to suffer any kind of nasty surprises. He's got better firepower than me, because he's armed with 16-inch guns. They beat my 15-inch guns, and he's got one more of them. And because I'm trying to get to within torpedo range, I can only shoot at him with 4 of my guns, and he can hit me with all 9 of his. And he's just angled enough. I mean, I might be able to get some armor-piercing penetrations going on here, but then again, maybe I can't. And of course, because I've gone for a full secondary build, I am not as tanky as I could be, and my guns aren't as accurate as they could be. And pretty much all of his secondaries are able to fire. Mine can't, because I'm pointing the nose towards him in an effort to get close enough to use my big advantage, my torpedoes. So while I have the superior secondary gun batteries, I'm probably only actually shooting at him with a quarter of them. I mean, you're never going to be able to fire at somebody with all of your secondaries, because some are down one side of the ship and some are down the other side of the ship. But he's able to fire at me with at least half of his, and I just can't do that. They don't have the firing arcs because I'm chasing him. And as soon as I get within torpedo range, he just starts kiting away again. So none of those torpedoes are ever going to catch him. He's probably not using, well, I don't know, maybe he is using the IFHE skill, but the Massachusetts secondaries only really benefit from IFHE against cruisers, and I'm not a cruiser. I feel like he's definitely setting way more fires than I am, but that could just as easily be because, well, I'm chasing him, so my ship doesn't have the angles to bring all of the secondaries to bear. And I think this was why I lost, because I'm trying to do both things at the same time, close in and torpedo him, and hit him with the secondaries. And, well, he's just too smart to fall for that old gag. I think there's only 2 ways I could have won this. I could have sat in the cap circle and just waited for him to come to me, or given up on trying to torpedo him, kited away, and let my superior secondaries actually do what they were good for. But, well, I didn't, and he outplayed me. So, well done to Fry on Fire in the USS Massachusetts. Another very good pick for this game format. It wasn't the only Massachusetts I fought. I actually fought 3 of them, and I beat the other 2 because, unlike Fry, they allowed me to capitalise on my strengths and take advantage of their weaknesses. One thing to note, by the way, you see that very, very low island between myself and that Massachusetts? That Massachusetts is desperately trying to get that island, or keep that island between me and him, so I can't torpedo him. I'm equally desperately trying to get around the side of it so I can torpedo him. And this guy wasn't stupid, by the way. He's deliberately aiming for and successfully knocking out my torpedo tubes. You know, he understands the threat that my torpedoes pose to him. But that tiny little island over there, because of the way the ballistics of German versus American secondary gun battery shells work, we could both be on opposite sides of that island, broadside onto each other. His secondaries would be able to fire, and mine wouldn't. Because his secondaries are basically American 5-inch destroyer turrets, the same turrets that you find on the Fletcher and the Gearing. And we all know how lightweight those American 5-inch shells are, and the amount of elevation that the turrets have to pull off in order to be able to fire at anything. My secondaries, on the other hand, my 105 and 150mm guns, are comparatively high velocity with a much, much more flat firing arc, which means that if we were both parked on either side of a low elevation island, his secondaries would be able to shoot at me, and my secondaries wouldn't be able to shoot at him. They'd effectively have their line of sight blocked. I have actually seen this happen. I saw Flamu lose a game against the Massachusetts in a Tirpitz exactly because of this. The Massachusetts secondaries were able to continue firing, and his Tirpitz's guns just stayed silent. Not really an issue for me here, of course. I mean, even despite the fact that this guy almost managed to permanently disable my torpedo tubes on the side that was engaging him. I did eventually manage to get the torpedoes away, and that's what killed him. Although it was still pretty close, but because I was able to use my secondaries and able to hit his broadside with 15-inch armour piercing on a couple of occasions, I think I would have still probably had the game in the bag. I think it's probably safe to say that consistently the toughest opponents that I faced were in the Massachusetts. I mean, you saw me lose against Fry on Fire because he basically refused to allow me to play the way I wanted to play. He outplayed me, he won. He deserved it. Well done to him. But he's the only person I've lost to so far. I'm sure there will be more in future, but for now it's just Fry, because he played the Massachusetts to its strengths and didn't allow me to play the Tirpitz to its strengths. This Massachusetts, however, has already committed the cardinal error of sailing around the side of an island when fighting something armed with torpedoes, when he didn't know for sure that I wasn't waiting around the side of the island. And like that battle with the Bismarck from earlier, this game has already been lost as far as that Massachusetts is concerned. My single biggest advantage over him is my torpedoes. If you do not have torpedoes and the enemy does, then you must A, know what torpedo range they have, and B, stay that distance at least away from any island, unless you know for sure that they're not on the other side of it. If that means you have to give up cap control, then you give up cap control and hope they come after you, and you kite away from them. It worked for Fry earlier, it would have worked for this guy, but he blundered right into me, and he paid the penalty. Right now he wants to be on the other side of that island, over to the right, so I can't torpedo him again, and I can't penetrate his 32mm stern plating with my 15-inch armour piercing, and I can't continue to pummel him with my secondaries. But really the mistake was made here when I first saw him. At that point it was already too late. So, current season of Tier 8 ranked sprint, which ends on the 3rd of January, so you still have a couple of days to get in there and earn some of the rewards. A couple of things that I have to say. First, easily the #1 best pick ship for this kind of battle format is the Tirpitz, or if you have it, the Tirpitz B, because they're both exactly the same ship, just, you know, one is a different colour. If you don't have a Tirpitz, but you do have a Massachusetts, then absolutely use it. It is also an extremely strong choice. Just, you know, kite. Alright. Stay away from things that have torpedoes. Same advice would go towards the Bismarck, which has equally strong secondaries and is an equally tough ship. Just stay away from things that have torpedoes. Don't go blundering around the side of islands at close range if you don't know what's on the other side of it. If you have neither of those ships, I can definitely recommend the Admiral Hipper. It's an extremely tanky cruiser, as is its premium sister ship, the Prinz Eugen. And with those ships, it's all about getting in close enough to use the torpedoes. The 27mm bow and deck plating definitely helps with that. The other thing that I'd like to say about this season of Ranked Sprint is just what a pleasure it's been to play. And I don't mean how enjoyable the format is. It has been very enjoyable, but just, well, how pleasurable it's been to play against the other people who have usually been playing, and quite surprisingly, been playing extremely well. Usually when I win in the Tirpitz, it's only been because I've been playing against somebody who has either had an incredibly bad ship, like the Richelieu, or who has just made one mistake, and it's been that one mistake that's cost them the match. In all my experience of Tier 8 ranked sprint thus far, I can't honestly think of a single occasion where somebody has just potatoed from start to finish. It's always either been incredibly close, or they have made one mistake and they couldn't recover from it. In fact, when I lost, it was because I made one mistake and I wasn't able to recover from it. And everybody's been such a good sport about it as well. I mean, within an hour of starting Tier 8 ranked sprint, I'd run out of my daily allotment of compliments, and I hadn't used a single complaint. I have no hesitation whatsoever in recommending, even if you've never played Ranked Battle before. I mean, I had never played Ranked Battle before, but I'm loving this. You really can't lose. Well, you can lose. I mean, obviously you can lose, but it doesn't cost you anything. In other ranked seasons, every time your team loses a battle, unless you're the top ranked player on the losing team, you lose a star and you actually lose progress, which of course led to the toxic behaviour of saving your star. As soon as it looked like the team was going to lose, everybody stopped trying to win, and they just started trying to gain the most experience on the losing side. Well, that doesn't happen. There's no penalty for losing a battle of Tier 8 ranked 1v1. At some point, you're going to rank up and hit rank 1. You just have to keep playing. And because it's 1 versus 1, the battles are over in 5 minutes. So it's not even a huge time investment. There is no downside to taking part in this ranked season, so it's definitely kept me entertained, in small doses, over the course of the Christmas holidays. And I have absolutely no hesitation in recommending it to all of you. If you enjoy it half as much as I have, it's going to be time well spent. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, take care. Have yourselves a safe and happy new year, and I'll catch you next time.